Better. Hey, Nate. So, hope everyone's doing well. I'm gonna try to keep this one short, although I get on my soapboxes. I've been watching a lot of video in the news. There's a lot of check your texts, please. I will do that. Thank you, Redleg. Um, I will. Sorry, I have two phones, but one's been charging in my truck because I. All right, I'll send you that in a little bit. Uh, but yeah. So I wanted to talk about two things really. Uh, there's a lot of videos and news, hey Suburban, about what's going on in Texas, which is now spreading. So the convoys are actually going from both California and from the East Coast. And they're not only going to Texas, but they're going to New Mexico and Arizona. So now there are multiple convoys going to multiple places. I'm hoping if work can cut me loose, I got some days off I can use. I'm going to try and meet one of the convoys. Hey, what's going on, Big Chap and Coffee? Hello, hello. And anyone I missed, sorry. Independent, hello. Hey, Dan. Celtic Grandma, hello. Loretta, hello. So I'm gonna try and meet the convoy, at least video the convoy for a bit. If not, I'm probably gonna jump in. Anthony Aguero, who's a congressional candidate and who's Latino and very pro protect America kind of guy and protect Mexico. He's like, Mexico and the US are now both in shit. He's hopefully I might be able to meet up with him during the convoy at some point. We'll see if work doesn't pull me away. But what I want to do, I want to talk real quick about two things, because a lot of people are talking about it, a lot of channels that I have respect for. And I wanted to back away from, hey, Militant, hey, Daryl, back away from the more, how does Prepper now put it, hyperbolic type stuff. Angry Prepper put out a couple of really good videos. There are quite a few people putting out little videos right now that are really good. So first of all, how would there be a conflict? When we're using the wrong historical examples to understand the current situation. So when it comes to nationalizing the Guard, right? A lot of people are saying, oh, let's nationalize, the president can nationalize the Guard and force them to obey. Well, and then they use the Civil Rights Act as the example. Hey, B&J, when the National Guard was called up to block the black students from going to college, and then Eisenhower, I believe it was Eisenhower, nationalized the Guard and now use that same Guard to protect the students, right? That's a different example. So at that time, there was a Supreme Court judgment that the black students should be allowed to go. But those were legal American citizens who were exercising their legal right to education, and segregation was overthrown. But all of the things that the nationalization, that when the president called up, he has to call the National Guard up with a mission and declare an emergency. He did both to get, I believe it was the Alabama National Guard, I don't remember, to protect the black students. But at the time, these were legal residents of America, right? The black community at the time, they were US citizens. The law had been changed federally, and the federal law said they could go to school with other people. The Supreme Court agreed with the law. And so basically he was using the National Guard to enforce, hey, book club, a lawful order. I don't know if I'm explaining it right. I got a few little things floating around my head at the moment. If Biden were to nationalize the Guard now, what would his emergency be and what would the legal basis be? So he could say, I'm going to nationalize the Guard because we have an emergency at the border. Well, what's the emergency? Because if the only reason he does is to pull the Guard away from the border, but he won't allow Border Patrol to do what they're trying to do in the first place, which is why the Guard's there, he would be nationalizing the Guard to allow and sanction an illegal act that is contrary to the law. All the Supreme Court ruled against Texas was that we cannot stop the Border Patrol from moving the concertina wire in that area. So what they did, if you look at the newer pictures, they pulled the wire off, they put containers, shipping containers, and then put the wire on top. Technically, the container will prevent civilians from getting hurt on the wire. So Texas found a loophole and did that. And actually, I've seen footage of the Border Patrol, the National Guard opening the gates so Border Patrol can bring rescue boats, because some people did get stuck in the water. The National Guard's redirecting them to the bridge where there is a immigration station for people to come in the correct way and get signed in, fingerprints, the whole 9 yards. So they're not being heartless, but so with respect to that, if the president called up the National Guard, he would have to declare an emergency and the legal basis. Well, he could say, okay, well, they're not moving the wire, but what's the emergency? Well, we have immigrants at the border. Well, that's why the guard's there. So if you pull the guard so that the wire can be moved, you're enabling an illegal act to occur, because then he's not allowing Border Patrol to arrest the people anyway. So it would be very contradictory, and it would probably get challenged. So Texas and several other states are already back in the courts saying, okay, well, we'll move the wire, but we need to manage this other problem, and they're challenging different aspects of it. So the legal side has not gone away. They're just finding loopholes. So I think using Eisenhower's civil rights era nationalizing of the Guard is not the right example of what Biden should do, because if he does it legally and constitutionally, it'll be bad. I'll be honest, book club, a lot of people are upset. Even like I said, my Uber drivers last month, almost out of the 5 or 6 that I met, most of them, except for one guy, was a guy from here, were all Cuban and Venezuelan immigrants. And they were super excited to be here. They're, when they realized I speak Spanish, they were excited. They're like, oh, I'm about to get my green card. One guy, he got his green card, and he was a cop in Cuba or something. And he's like, I thought they'd stop me, but I got my green card and my fingerprints and my son. And then they denied his wife because she filled out the wrong form. So he said, then we had to get a lawyer, but we'll have her card soon. But they were excited. One, it said his family was going to open a bakery. One said, I'm going to buy a box truck so I can do deliveries, because that's what I did in Venezuela, and I was good money. Like, these people want to work. They were super excited to be here. And every single one, guys, like, I'm not exaggerating, every single one are like, you have a communist in the White House. I didn't come here for this guy. Like, they're pissed at the at the administration. One of them even went so far to say that we're letting terrorists in. Like, he said, I saw them and they were not, what he said, de habla español, que hablan español. They're not Spanish-speaking people. He was saying, no, they're these Ukrainians and Arabs and this. No, they don't. And he was very upset that we were bringing terrorists in. Like, and this is just his opinion. And but to the point, so the president, if he tried to nationalize the Texas Guard, the argument could legitimately be made that he's nationalizing the Guard to enable an illegal act. And if he enables the illegal act, then as an officer and as enlisted, if you're an NCO, if you guys who've served, remember your oath, you obey the president and the commanders above you and protect the Constitution from threats, foreign and domestic. The argument could be made that you're allowing enemies to become domestic, and that's an unlawful order. And morally speaking, officers and commanders, even NCOICs in the military, have an obligation to disobey an act if it is unlawful. And so that's going to be a hard thing. Then we're not even factoring in the fact that Texas has its own state guard, and actually 30 states now have their own state guard, which is more like civil defense. So I was in the state guard here, which is a legal entity. In Texas, we answer to the governor, so the president can't call us up anyway. So yeah, it gets very convoluted now. But I don't think using the Eisenhower example is correct in looking at Biden. So people who are saying, oh, nationalize the guard like they did in the civil rights era, that would be I honestly think, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but I am a graduate student in contract law, that is possibly an illegal act, and it could get challenged. So that's part one. The president would cause himself more problems, or the administration in general, by nationalizing the guard. They'd be way smarter trying to cut a deal and make things happen that way. And I hope that's where it goes. So part two is, what would CW2 look like? What would an internal conflict look like in the states? And again, we're using a historical example of the Civil War. If you look at civil wars throughout history, the American Civil War is very unusual, very unusual. Think about it. You had the Mason-Dixon line. You had northern states, southern states, and yeah, there were slave owners in the north and freedom, non-slavery people in the south, right? I'm not going to get into that. But for the most part, you had this many states fighting this many states, and there was kind of a demarcation, right? Bosnia, that's a great example, book club. That's what it would look like. So imagine like Oregon, right? Portland's really blue, right? That's where they did the Chaz or the Chad or whatever the fuck it was called, that little zone that basically got taken over by a warlord, and they were like molesting people. They wouldn't let ambulances in. That's Portland. The rest of Oregon is much more to the right. So who's to say the rest of Oregon, oh, it was Seattle, thank you. Okay, Seattle, Washington's another example. Both of those states are red except for the city, Seattle and Portland. What if the rest of the states said, you know what, we're going to form our own little organization and we're going to march on the city? The cops have already been shit on in both cities. What if a representative, like, okay, hypothetically, if I was leading a militia in Oregon and I wanted to take over Portland, I would send a representative to go to the cops and say, hey, look, why are you defending these people? They're going to shit on you. They've been shooting at you, stabbing you, and defunded you. Let us run them out, put them all in jail, and then we'll just start a new state. We'll reset the government. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's what it would come to. You would have different counties or people in the same state fighting with each other. Like California, you'd have Bakersfield and like Sacramento, other than the capital itself, is very red. Like most of the state's red. Sacramento, you know, who's to say the red part of Northern California says, you know what, screw this. We're going to lay siege to LA and cut off the docks and cut off the water and the food until they surrender. Can you guys kind of, we all need to stop calling. So yeah, don't want to fight my country, right? And Big Chap, there's an argument to make that point as well, that revolution versus a civil war, and maybe that's what it is. But you look throughout history, other than the American Civil War, Bosnia, which Prepper Book Club, thank you, I completely forgot about that. What's happening in Sudan right now, the Spanish Civil War, the Russian Revolution. These were not, oh, east and west, north and south. No, it was in the streets. So a lot of these monkeys' asses who are way off on the left or way off on the right, who are saying we need to have a revolution, we have to keep in mind that's going to be in the streets. That's going to be among counties. Do we need to address the government? Absolutely. I'm hoping that actual violence is the last option, because it will be ugly. It'll be like what's happened in Iraq right now. It would be in the streets. Think about it. So let's say, again, I like using Oregon. Hey, Jason, it would be neighbor against neighbor. Right, and Kentucky Survival. So I saw a video. Oh God, I need to find this moron. Um, uh, because I tend to try to be open-minded about people's ideas, but this was so developmentally challenged. Let me see if I can find it because I want you guys to see this. Hold on, let me see if I can find this doofus person. Here, hold on. All right. That person is dancing saying, when Gen Z wins the next civil war. That person would not be able to run down the street away from an enemy. It's almost like they're priming these young folks to do this. If you do a Google search for Gen Z wins Civil War and just I seeing it on another screen, there's glare. Hey, kill it. So a lot of these monkeys' asses, especially these leftists, and they're not liberals, right? Bill Mayer's a liberal. I don't agree with him, but at least he makes intelligent conversation. He's willing to debate openly. I respect that. Whether I agree with him or not is different. But priming is the word. Yes, boo, absolutely. But they're talking about, oh yeah, well we'll just win. No, who's gonna fight the war? Like they're asking, people like this oaf here who's dancing, this big potato of a person, and not judging the person on it's just, do you not understand what would happen? Look at the footage in Sudan right now, in Khartoum. They literally had neighborhoods. One army unit took over this, the other unit took over that, and they basically shot up the two neighborhoods fighting with each other. Most can't carry a bag of Doritos farther than their couch. Right. And again, I'm not saying things can't change. I'm not saying that it could come to that. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But I think a lot of the people, and especially these leftists, who they're not even challenging the narrative at all. Like I said, Bill Mayer, I view him as more liberal, but he'll challenge the narrative. Like he'll go out, I've seen him go after liberals and conservatives, even though we all know he's kind of on the left. These are socialists. Like these are legit useful idiots. And I don't think they realize, and who's going to suffer the most if that happens? It's going to be the working people. It'll be like the Purge, right? The rich people, the Oprahs and the, what's his phrase, the big-headed guy, The Rock, and the people from The View, they have gated communities, and they have security, and they have armed people who protect them. But what about us, right? We'd be stuck in the streets, right? The working class folks across America, regardless, black, white, brown, yellow, take your pick, are the ones who are going to suffer because, wow, John was trying to go to the grocery store. He got shot by a sniper who thought he was from the other militia. I mean, hey, Joe, at the open gate, 0.5 miles from me. Yes, I'm going to see if I do go to Eagle Pass, I'm going to drive down the, okay, so the highway on the border. Now, what's happening is people are taking pictures and Border Patrol is running them off. And they actually tried to run off a lawyer this morning, and he's like, well, I have the landowner's permission, and the lawyer was smart enough to get a letter written, signed by the landowner saying, this lawyer, John Smith, has permission to videotape from my property. So the Border Patrol guy's like, you can't stay here, man. I don't want to tow your car, but, you're in our way. Hey, can you at least move your car? And the lawyer said, I can move my car. I can do that for you. So he moved the car. And he's like, you shouldn't be here. It's private property. And he's like, I got a letter. And the border guy looks at it and goes, well played. He gives him the letter back. He's like, just keep the car over there because we gotta take these guys into custody. They had 40 people. Now this one was a family. It was families in there too. So they were trying to like keep the kids together with the parents, and Border Patrol had their hands full. The guy was at least gracious enough with the cameraman to say, all right, look, you have the legal right, but can you like move so we can do what we need to do and you can film here? And they were respectful, which I applaud both of them. But I don't think when people are asking for nationalizing the Guard, or when they're asking for revolution, civil war, I think they're using the wrong historical context. Actually, I think it was Book Club's point about revolution, it would be more like that. Because remember, the revolution wasn't East versus West, North versus South. There were fights all over the 13 colonies, right? It was just a hodgepodge of fighting. That's what would happen. And yeah, the lawyer was super smart. And he gave his business card. He's like, here, in case you need a lawyer. And the Border Patrol guy's like, no, I'm good. But he played his cards well. He was legal. And, the lawyer was actually commenting. I gotta find the video. Maybe I'll try and post it on my channel. But he was saying, these look like actual families. Like they were lost. They were sitting on the side of the road waiting for Border Patrol. Like they were turning themselves in, like, hey, we're here, hi, we'd like to be processed. And the cartels are doing that on purpose, dumping random ass people all over the place, because now Border Patrol's all over the place, right? And while they're chasing families around, they're getting fentanyl and cocaine into the country. So yeah, and it could be they don't want us to see. Now, to be fair to that Border Patrol guy, I think genuinely they had cars everywhere, and there were people and little kids, and they're trying to like put some of this older folks in an ambulance. So they probably had the roads to there will be. Yeah, now that Kentucky, I can see that. At some point, you won't have a front line like the Civil War. You will have A versus B in different places, right? So like the Portland, Oregon. So Portland may wall itself off and say, okay, we are blue. And then the rest of the state says, well, we're team red. And they're going to fight in between those two, that line. And then I'm assuming the red will just lay siege to blue in the cities and just wait them out. Turn off all their water and electricity and fine, be in the dark. And see how that works for you in the winter. But these are hey, Neil, off the wall, hello. So, hey, Love and Life. And possibly Love and Life, they may. The problem is when you push the society to that point, who's in control now? Because if you just ran, a bunch of socialists out of your county, and the army comes in and says, give us your guns. Now, all of a sudden, now you're the enemy, right? I've seen that soldier who's like, yeah, if they declare martial law, you're walking around with a gun, you're my enemy. Well, do you know how many millennial and Gen X veterans are out here who literally spent 20 years fighting an insurrection, fighting against an insurrection? You don't think these guys learn stuff? So where would the line? Yeah, but to your point, it would be very, very complicated, very convoluted. But I do think the media is not using the correct historical context, either for the nationalization of the Guard or what a civil war would look like. It will not have state boundaries. It might in some places. Like I could definitely see like in the movie Florida Alliance and the Texas Republic, and Oklahoma says, I'm going with Texas, and now you have that border, right? But like, think of Nevada. You'd have all the red states like Idaho, from Idaho to Ohio, and then you have California to the left, and Nevada would become a battleground, right? It would get chewed into pieces. Kansas might be the same way. It might get broken into pieces. The movie Jericho would be another good example of how it would happen. And yeah, big chap, absolutely. That's absolutely as big as Germany. Yeah, off the wall. So they don't they're not using the right historical context for a lot of these situations. And what I think they're doing is I think they're trying to push this fear narrative to get clicks. And what they're doing is encouraging our society as a whole to think that this is okay. That, oh yeah, we'll just have a civil war, a revolution, whatever, and yeah, we'll teach them. No. Off the wall, absolutely. It's frustrating too, because it's not the right example that they're using. It would be actually very horrendous to have a true civil war / revolt, like a full-blown one, not like, oh, this county has rebelled against the government, or like Waco. No, I'm talking an entirety of 30 states decide, no, you know what, YOLO to DC, and then think about it. So you're going to roll army into, I don't know, Louisiana or Texas. And you roll the army into Texas. You know how many Texas boys and girls are in the military right now? You think my sons are going to shoot their fellow Texans? They may not obey the rule. They might like, no, this is unlawful. And now what? And it would divide the military. So New Mexico, California borders Mexico as well. Oh yeah, no, it's all across the border right now. I mean, it's a hot, hell, they just showed a boat landing in California. It was 2 rib boats, basically rigid hull inflatable boats, with about 30 people, came up on the beach just north of San Diego, north of, for those of you who are Navy, north of Coronado, where the Navy technically was outside their area. They hit the beach and all these people started running. One cop car shows up and the cop's like, he's on the radio. It's like, there's 30 people running in different directions. I'm by myself. I can't catch all these folks. And they just ran away. So, but to the point, the historical context of Eisenhower nationalizing the Guard is not the right one, because Biden nationalizing today would be in order to pull the Guard to allow an illegal act with illegal citizens or illegal migrants. And that's not going to fly constitutionally. The states will disobey, much like Texas has, and now multiple states have. And the example of civil war is not the right one, because it won't be like East versus West, North versus South. It'll be county against city, state against state. It would be ugly. And even if you lived in a blue state, hypothetically, hey, All-American, you're in a blue state, say like Illinois, it's kind of like, or Michigan, right? Michigan's blue, but it's the city. The rest is red. So do the counties fight with each other? You see what I'm saying? It's not going to be very well defined. You're going to have kind of enclaves of red and blue fighting with each other. And it's going to be ugly. And then you're going to have the military trying to get between them. And it's going to be bad. So we absolutely, and again, the fact that every new green card holder I have met, 201, has told me we need to stop letting the communists in, and we need to stop letting terrorists in, because I saw them when I went to the El Paso checkpoint, or I went to the McAllen checkpoint, and I said, here's my passport, I would like to have asylum. And they did the stamp and the fingerprints for me. And he said the guys next to me, I could hear them speaking, and it wasn't Spanish and it wasn't English. And they were from another place. And, you know, he just was like, I think they're terrorists. You know, the new immigrants are like, what are we doing? I came here to get away from this. So, yeah, Kentucky survival, that's not a bad place. So, folks, when you hear this stuff on the news, remember when the media is saying, oh, well, you know, in 1956, they nationalized the Guard. Different situation. Oh, well, a civil war, different situation. This shit will be in the streets if it happens. It will be more like Bosnia, as Prepper Book Club said. It'll be like Bosnia, the Spanish Civil War, what's happening in Sudan right now, what happened in Iraq after the war, and not the Baltics, oh, hell's bells. Lebanon in the 80s. Dragonflies, they said it was Arabic. He said I could recognize the way it was spoken as Arabic. And I said it wasn't Russian. He said no, this was like Arabic words. He said I just don't understand them, but you know, like if you hear Spanish, even if you don't speak it, you hear the words and you're like, yeah, that's guy's speaking Spanish. And he said, well, I listened and that was Arabic. So you never know, folks. And again, it's not saying every Arabic immigrant is a terrorist, because they're not. But the point is, right now, I saw a report this morning. Denver has 700,000 people population. In the last 6 months, maybe a year, they've had 40,000 illegal migrants show up. Do the math, that's about 8% increase in the course of 6 months. But none of them are employed. None of them have insurance. So it's taking up housing. It's taking up medical. It's taking up welfare. It's taking up food. They were not ready. Kentucky Survival also. 8 million. 8 million's bigger than a bunch of states right now. Oh no, I agree with you, book club. This is bigger than like a Democratic or Republican thing. This is a global thing to destabilize entire nations. Hakasi, I couldn't even see that, but it looked funny. Taught me some Arabic. There's Niels. It could be up to 60 million. We don't know. That's the problem. And it could be legal as well, right? I don't know. Every Cuban I've met, they open bakeries and restaurants. I'm all about that. You're going to come here and open a business and raise your kids with our community? That's awesome. I'm 100% about that. When you come and push women down the stairs like they're doing in France because she had a cross and you don't agree with her cross, and they push that lady down the stairs in Paris, in the subway, that's bullshit. At least overrun. He saw it himself. Yeah. So again, and 8 million, if only a half of 1%. So what's 1%? 800,000? No, that's 10%. So 80,000 is 1%. So half of 1% of 8 million would be 40,000. Did I do that right? So 40,000, could you imagine what 40,000 Al-Qaedas could do? 40,000 is bigger than the National Guard in most states, except for California, Texas, New York, and Massachusetts, and Florida. I mean, think about that. That's huge. That's insane. So we don't know. We don't know who's coming. But I just wanted to give some historical context to what they were talking about in the news the last week, because I'm listening and I'm like, this is not a good example to explain to the people, right? You're misinforming and confusing the general public into thinking like, oh, it'll be like Texas versus whoever. No, it'll be ugly. And it won't necessarily have front lines because you don't know. So, yeah. Anyway, so folks, remember the Eisenhower example of nationalizing the Guard. Hey, Lucky, not a good comparison to what's happening right now on a legal and a constitutional basis. And the Civil War, as an example, is not a good comparison to what would happen if something collapsed right now, because there would not be this state versus that group of states. It would be everybody versus everyone, and it would be messy and ugly. So anyway, folks, just a little bit of historical context, not to fearmonger, but just so everyone understands that the comparisons they're making are just not quite right. And the more we understand how things could go, the better informed we are as to our decisions, right? I live in an area that's very red, very red. Um, and even both parties, like, nobody wants that, right? Like, people are, thank you, Loretta, people are rational people. Like, we don't want our city to burn, right? But you go to a place like I said, Portland in Oregon, there's a lot of bad feelings in that state between the counties and the city, right? New York's another one. It's a red state except for New York City. So, and Long Island's become red again. So it's really weird. And how would that look, right? Things will happen. And it won't be one of those situations where, oh, they're fighting somewhere else. It's going to be, we're going to see it in the streets, depending on where you are. More so in some places than others, if it happens like that. So again, the better examples of what would happen in a modern civil war would be the Bosnia, Spanish Civil War, Lebanon, that kind of thing. Syria, where it's just everyone against everyone. An election year too. So Big Chap, we've actually had guard rotating to the border for the last 7 years. I know this because one of my other platoons, before I hung my uniform up, they went down to the border and they were doing search and rescues. But the quantity of people coming in were not what we're seeing now. And the manpower that got sent down there is not what's being sent down there now. So it's rough. I need to reach out to some of the guys if they're still in and find out what they're seeing right now, if they can talk about it. But folks, again, don't panic. Understand that if something pops off, it will be in the streets, in some places more than others. The border issue isn't new. Yeah. Right. And again, the election year is just icing on the cake, Lucky. But yeah, Lucky is absolutely right. We've been fighting it in Texas for a while. Nobody's heard about it because it wasn't insane. Love and life, that's my point. Even 400, imagine 400, 500 people. Like, you look at the Mumbai attack, it's terrible. Farmer, yeah, I wonder if that's going to be a bashing the left wing, bashing the right wing, or just scaring the crap out of everyone to make a lot of money. I could see three, too. I could see this. The director is also the director of 28 Days Later and Cloverfield, all wearing fresh, clean, white Biden Please Let Us In t-shirt. Yeah, no, absolutely, Lucky. So guys, ladies and gentlemen, look, when you prep for both local and possibly larger scale supply chain disruptions. This is stuff we're probably already doing. You probably already have 80% of what you may need right now, or you at least know 80, 90% of what you should have, and you're working toward it. So just keep doing what you're doing. Don't let the hyperbole make you insane, but understand, yes, an all-American and I and Mad Shad should be, barring any changes, Friday night doing a live stream about defending oneself in the home and in the street, and this is something we can cover as well. But again, you already covered it, but did you see the Islamic bad dude who just did? Oh yes. So there's the guy I had on my channel last week, a Rebel Intel, spoke to a law enforcement guy he's in touch with, and they said they're looking for that individual. They can't confirm that it is him, but according to his source, he said it sure as hell looks like that guy. We'd like to talk to him. He also pointed out that, depending on what country he's from, their egos are very big, so he may just be running his mouth. But he said all he's done was get Texas DPS's attention, so DPS is looking for his ass now. Him specifically, the one who's smack talking on the border. So yeah, congratulations, dumbass. He should have just shut up. He started running his mouth, and then people started looking him up, and it may be him. They're not sure, but they're like, man, damn well looks like him. Let's make sure it's not. So now they're looking for his ass. Now, if they find him, they might find other people too. You never know, right? Hey, Vision, what's going on? So, folks, again, remember, no, lucky. Remember, guys, girls, you probably already have 80-90% of what you need, or 80-90%. There's always that 5-10% none of us can predict or we can't get our hands on easily, right? And we're just going to have to wing it from there. But if you got that 80% down where you don't have to be in the streets if there's an attack, if there's revolts, revolutions, aliens, whatever, get off the street. That way you're not out there in the shit that's going on. So in any case, guys, I got to get back. I got a meeting here in a minute. They canceled a meeting on me right after lunch, so I had a few minutes to chat with you guys. You guys be good, be safe out there, and remember, look up these historical contexts so you guys understand what they're saying. The comparisons they're making are not accurate. They're not correct. They should be making a different comparison for people to understand what's going on. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you guys be good, be safe, Godspeed, and I will see you all later. You guys take care.